Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. Happy Friday, it's January 17th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Fresno County's support for Donald Trump in the November election may have surprised Democrats, but local members of the GOP say it's a sign of things to come.
It really does feel, at least to Republicans, that things are changing in the United States, and for the better.
In just a few minutes, we speak with a leader of the Fresno County Republican Party, but first, today's headlines. Bakersfield, California State Assembly member Jasmeet Bains has introduced new legislation to maintain staffing levels at the state's firefighting agency, known as CAL FIRE. The bill would authorize the agency to keep firefighters on staff all year long with proper funding. Currently, CAL FIRE does not have enough funding to keep firefighters through the winter. But Bains says keeping the agency staffed all year is needed because the state no longer has a, quote, fire season. Bains, who is a physician, is also currently deployed to the LA County fires with the state's medical assistance team. In the lead-up to the wildfires in Southern California, the region experienced weather patterns the state had seen only 3 times in the last 100 years. Alistair Bland with our partner Cal Matters has more.
Here's a reminder about the weather extremes Southern Californians have lived through in the last few years. In 2023 and early 2024, we had rainy winters. All this rain promoted heavy growth of grasses and brush. 8 months without rain, one of the driest spells in Southern California's history, followed and sucked moisture from all that vegetation. This problem was exacerbated by one of the hottest summers on record. According to a report from UCLA researchers out this week, we've only seen weather whiplash like this twice before, between 1907 and 1908 and 1992 and 1993. Linking weather events to climate change is hard to do, but researchers have already said that climate change likely worsened the LA fires by making last summer and all of 2024 exceptionally hot.
Alistair Bland covers water for our partner Cal Matters. The Wonderful Company is donating $10 million toward relief efforts from the LA County fires. Owners of the company, Stuart and Linda Resnick, announced the commitment this week. They say part of the funding will immediately go to the LA Police and Fire Foundations. The remaining funds will be distributed as relief efforts continue. The Wonderful Company employs roughly 3,000 people in the Central Valley. It's the maker of well-known products like Wonderful Pistachios and Fiji Water. Earlier this week, the company took to social media to dispel rumors that they had withheld water from fire relief efforts. A long-running Spanish-language TV show in the San Joaquin Valley is coming to an end. KVPR's Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado has this report.
The Fresno Bee reports the popular morning program Despierta Valle Central will air for the last time on Friday. Despierta Valle Central, which translates to Wake Up Central Valley, has been a staple in many Spanish-speaking households in the region. It airs early mornings on KFTV Channel 21. The morning show brought viewers music and interviews with community leaders. It was also a trusted hub for those seeking resources on things like immigration or job openings. A statewide news program will take its place, according to the Bee. The show launched in 1990 with a slightly different name. Its main host, Lupita Lomelí, became just as much of a household name as the program itself. For KVPR News, I'm Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado.
Join KVPR for an open house Thursday, January 23rd from 5 till 7 p.m. at the station's broadcast center in Clovis. Meet the team, enjoy a studio tour, and graze on hors d'oeuvres. RSVP at kvpr.org/open house.
And now to our main story. In November's presidential election, voters in most of the counties that make up the Central Valley voted heavily for President-elect Donald Trump. That includes Fresno County, which flipped for a Republican for the first time since 2004. So what can we read from this major shift as President-elect Trump takes office next week? Peter Halajian is a district representative for newly elected Republican Assemblymember David Tongipa, who represents the 8th District. That covers parts of Fresno, Merced, and Mariposa counties. Halajian is also recognized by some as the chair of the Fresno County Republican Party. He joins me now to talk about what the shifting political winds in the region could mean and what Valley Republicans are looking forward to under a second Trump presidency. Thanks for joining me, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Peter, I do want to ask you about some recent conflict within the Fresno County Republican Party and why not everyone's recognizing you as the chairperson. But first, I want to ask you, as we witness Trump take office on Monday, what's going through your mind and the minds of other Republicans?
Oh, I mean, everyone is excited. I know I certainly am. I think the campaign he ran in 2024 is going to be studied for a long time to come. And it really does feel, at least to Republicans, that things are changing in the United States and for the better. It's been a long couple of years of sad economic times and, COVID and the last 4 years, I think everyone can agree, have been a bit of a slog. So it does seem, at least to us, that things are changing for the better, and we're all very excited.
As we mentioned earlier, Fresno County had a majority of voters cast a ballot for Trump, the first Republican to win the county since 2004.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's 20 years. Trump did, however, receive about the same amount of votes in the county compared to 2020. It was Kamala Harris receiving 40,000 fewer than Biden that really made the difference. So take us a little bit behind the scenes from your perspective of just how this Fresno County Republican Party was able to flip the county.
So I think Donald Trump flipped Fresno County. And while locally Republican groups and Republican volunteers and people were passionate about Donald Trump, like you said, I think the numbers reflect that Donald Trump has a large amount of support in the Central Valley, but also that Democrats don't have the support that they think they do. And I think that there are a lot of issues at play and that affect why that would be. But ultimately, Donald Trump flipped Fresno County. He is a unique political figure in this country. I think, love him or hate him, the coalition that he's brought together over the course of this last year is one that I think people of a diverse set of political beliefs and persuasions can at least find something in that they agree with or support. And I don't think that Vice President Harris did a particularly good job of that, which is probably why the numbers reflect what they do.
President-elect Trump has made immigration and mass deportations a central part of his agenda. Here in the Valley, there are thousands of undocumented people, with many of them playing a crucial role in the local agriculture industry. If Trump goes through with these mass deportations, economic experts are warning it could have a negative impact on our local economy. So from your perspective, how would you advise we deal with immigration while not straining our economy or disrupting our workforce?
Sure. First, I sort of reject the premise that immigration is primarily an economic argument. I tend to agree with, honestly, many people on the left that these are real people and that these are human beings, and to look at their status in this country through the lens primarily of what it does for California agriculture, I think misses the point to an extent. Now, I understand why people would be upset with the prospect of mass deportations. I like the way Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has talked about, starting with the verifiable criminal migrant element in this country and removing them. This is a process and it'll take time. So the way I would advise the president is when you are looking at the Central Valley or anywhere in this country, there are going to be people who are citizens who can step up and fill those jobs. As we move forward on this to remove individuals from the country who are here illegally, I would advise the president then to perhaps consider funding for job training programs and preparing American citizens to fill those gaps. As I talked about Vice President-elect Vance, one of the stories he tells is of when he met an executive for a certain hotel chain, and they talked about how they loved having illegal immigrants in this country because it just made their wages so cheap. And that's really what I'm talking about. I mean, that's horrible. That's a horrible thing to say. It shouldn't matter where you're from. If you're doing the job, you should be paid a fair wage. However, if you are in the country illegally and that is depressing the wages for American workers, you should not be in the country illegally in the first place. And I have no issue with the president primarily focusing on deporting those who are in the country illegally, because I think it's better for everyone in general. It'll mean necessarily that American workers will be able to fill those roles. They'll have to if these companies that employ or look to migrant labor specifically want to continue to operate, but are now having a more difficult time finding migrant labor. But also it means that these immigrants aren't going to be taken advantage of by the corporations that enjoy paying lower wages to migrant labor.
Before I let you go, we did want to discuss some conflict right now happening within the Fresno County Republican Party. Earlier this month, some voting members of the county party reelected Liz Kolstad as the chair, but many elected officials, including Fresno County Supervisor Gary Bredefeld and your boss, Assemblymember David Tongipa, are recognizing you as the chair. So can you give us a brief overview of what's happening there?
So I ran for chairman of the Republican Party of Fresno County, like you said. At the meeting, every other January after the election, we hold an organizational meeting where we elect a chair and an executive committee. At our organizational meeting on January 7th, the incumbent chair, Ms. Kolstad, presided over the meeting. She called for a vote on electing a new chair. However, she had barred one member, a voting regular member of the committee, from entering. There was no reason for this member to be excluded, but her argument and the argument of the executive committee was that she was late and would not be allowed to vote. But the motion hadn't even been made to elect a new chair, and this member, there was no reason for her to be left out of the meeting.
So a vote was called.
Elizabeth
Kolstad was elected, and then what happened?
So our argument follows essentially this way, that because that member was excluded, Ms. Kolstad was not properly elected chair, which means that every other motion that she presided over would be invalid because she didn't have the authority as chair to preside over that. That would include the adjournment of the meeting. And because the meeting was not properly adjourned, voting majority, 16 members, met at Denny's, and we reconvened the meeting. The
same night?
The same night. We sent notice out to all members of the committee and specified that an election was going to be held and requested their attendance. And I was unanimously elected by 16 members of the committee.
So where do we go from here?
Both Ms. Kolstad and myself have reached out to the state Republican Party and requested that we be recognized as chair. I have sent documentation supporting my point of view. She, I'm sure, has done the same. As far as I know, as far as I understand, what we're looking at now is there are two people claiming to be chair. Myself, I believe I won fairly, and Ms. Kolstad. What I have asked for is that the state Republican Party either recognize the election that was held at Denny's, where I was elected chair, or in the alternative, send somebody, a delegation, or help oversee as a neutral third party a new election where all members of the committee are eligible to vote with verification on which members are properly a part of the committee, which members are not allowed to vote, if any, so that Republican voters in Fresno County can be sure that the Republican Party here locally is a fair and rational organization that is committed to the success of Republican candidates and Republican values in Fresno County.
That was Peter Halajian with the Fresno County Republican Party. Thanks so much, Peter.
Thank you so much for having me.
In a press release sent to KVPR with no author listed, members opposing Peter Halajian as the chair of the Fresno County Republican Party say in part, and I'll quote, The allegations of election misconduct are meritless, and the attempt to damage the party to satisfy personal interests by alleging election misconduct is shameful. The meandering narrative spun by these individuals is denied and rejected entirely. Unfortunately, however, we must balance the party's desire to let the truth be known while not dignifying these bogus claims that do not deserve acknowledgement." End quote. The statement also goes into detail about why they oppose the different specific allegations laid out by Halajian. And that is today's show. We will be off on Monday for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but back on Tuesday. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
We could all use a little help navigating the news these days. The Consider This podcast wants to give you a hand. 6 days a week, we'll help you make sense of the day's biggest news story and what it means for you in less than 15 minutes. Listen now to the Consider This podcast from NPR.